Hi guys. Tonight I would like to talk to you about a hot topic that everybody has been discussing and really worried about. And that is the situation with the proposed legislation by the Chinese government uh, to regulate online teaching companies, um, mostly with regards to the hours that they will be allowed to teach. Um, and it's not just the hours, but it's also partially got to do with the hourly rates that they're allowed to charge the parents, and certain days that would be allowed, and certain days will be excluded from the teaching regime which is currently maintained. I did a lot of reading about it today, and well, I spent 7 years on campus studying law, teaching law, and doing legal research. However, I'm wholly unqualified to claim that I'm a specialist in interpreting Chinese legislation. However, the post that was on our page today was posted by Reuters. Now, I mean, some people asked if this post was reliable, and I can tell you this much. Reuters is one of the most reliable institutions in the world. They're reliable enough for big companies and politicians to take them seriously. Um, I see no reason why we should think that anything posted by Reuters should be anything other than the objective truth or their interpretation or their prediction. Um, okay, so let's look at what the current situation is. The Chinese government for the past 10 years has not had, was actually had a decrease in population growth. And in addition to which, they are concerned by the fact that their labor force will not be able to support the elderly people in China. I'm sure whoever is watching this video is not really interested in the political motivation for this proposed legislation, so I'll skip that. But needless to say, I think I think it is appropriate to mention the following. The Chinese government is concerned about the young children being exploited, and not just the students, but also the parents who are paying for these services. In the one survey, I remember 4,000 families were interviewed by a Chinese, I think it was a Chinese newspaper, and 92% of these families paid additional money for tutoring. Okay, so it's a 70 odd billion-dollar industry. Uh, the Chinese government is concerned that these kids are going to school for X amount of hours a day, and then they go home and they get tutored for an additional 3 or 4 hours. Who knows how long? I've taught some Chinese kids and I've seen what they look like at night. And they're terribly exhausted. You can see these kids are run down. So, love them or hate them, the Chinese government, I think, is justified to a certain extent for at least attempting to regulate this, because uh, they described it, the government described it in the one, they quoted the premier as saying that it is that the online teaching industry in China is chaotic. Well, we all know that he's right. Um, I am not the biggest fan. I'm not claiming to be, but I'm trying to look at this objectively, and I'm trying to tell you what my take is on it. Now, again, please don't quote me as saying that this is what is going to happen. I'm simply trying to clarify the situation for you with this video in an attempt to help you to understand how to proceed or to make an informed decision with regards to your online teaching career. Right. First of all, uh, I did not only use one source, I used 8 different sources. Usually, I would use 20 different sources because that is a very good research regime, and that is the best way of doing it. I just don't have the time. Um, but I used 8 different sources. Uh, All 8 of them were relatively highly rated sources. For example, it was not some small little unknown magazine who had an opinion about it. Um, so, from all the articles, I can gather the following: this legislation has not been passed yet. Proposed legislation of this nature has been brought up as a topic of discussion. I've read all the way back from 2017. Then it was a serious topic again in 2018, and then it was raised as a topic again in 2019. So, for the past 3 years, it has really been a topic which has been discussed seriously by the Chinese government. Um, Insofar as the amount of action that they've taken, uh, I wouldn't describe the action that they've taken thus far as being reactionary, how would I describe it, impulsive. They've been quite calculated by the manner in which they've regulated the online industry so far, but they've been quite liberal. And they've allowed companies a lot of discretion with regards to the materials that they use and the hours that they provide the tutoring. Now, this is what's important to us because the hours that are allocated would determine how many hours would be available for teachers to teach. Okay. So, most especially during holidays, that's when teachers literally make, well, I don't want to exaggerate, I want to be really careful in this video, but they can make up to 60% more than they usually do due to the booking rate. And in some of these articles I've read, not unlike the one that we had on our page today, the Chinese government seems to think that it's not a good idea to pressurize these kids during their spring holidays. Um, is there actually going to be a total ban of tutoring during that time? Who knows? Could it possibly happen? Definitely, definitely. If the premier of the Chinese government is quoted saying something with regards to any topic, then you can realize that is of such a serious nature, um, that it is beyond merely a vocal point for discussion. It's more than just a topic of discussion. It is very likely going to translate into some type of legislation. Um, and you must understand legislation. Legislation isn't always restrictive. Some types of legislation is also regulatory. Now, okay, you could say that a regulation is a restriction. It depends on how you want to look at it. Does this mean a total collapse of the online teaching industry with regards to Chinese schools? I don't believe so. Uh, is it going to have a major impact? Yes. Is it going to reduce the amount of available jobs on the market at the moment? Most likely. Um, is it worth being concerned about? I would think so, I guess. Uh, the reason why I say that, and again, I'm just giving you my take on it. If it reaches the highest sphere of government, then it is considered to be very serious. And the Chinese government and Chinese parents take the education of their youth very seriously. They have always. Which is why it's actually amazing that the online teaching industry has gone, uh, comparatively speaking, unregulated. It's not like it's not regulated. I can't say that, and it's not what I want to say. It's just not as regulated as in school education. And the reason for that was, up to this point, is that it was described as an extracurricular activity. Okay. That's why it was not covered by the legislation which sets out the requirements for official government educational systems, such as government schools. Uh, now, the Chinese government has decided to take a more invasive step because the tutoring seems to have an impact on their curriculums. due to the exploitation of the kids are burning out. That is the one complaint. And they're also concerned that the parents are being exploited, like I've said earlier on. Um, Again, if you from the articles that I've read, this is proposed. This is by no means a permanent decision that was made by the Chinese government, and for now it seems like they are going to do a test run where they are going to limit the amount of hours that these children can be tutored. Okay. What will be the end result of that? Well, that is impossible for me to predict or anybody. But, okay, now I'm going to contradict myself because I'm going to attempt to give you some sort of an idea of what could possibly happen. Um, the bigger cities like Beijing have started imposing legislation restricting online teaching companies. And on the one page, I saw that people were actually, some of these companies were actually, for operational requirements, dismissing some of their employees and downscaling. Now, this is fact. Uh, this means that the online teaching companies in China are expecting, they're expecting a big change. And if they are dismissing employees or downscaling, then obviously they assume that the Chinese government has a long-term intent of decreasing the amount of hours available for online tutoring significantly. Uh, when exactly this will happen is very difficult. Some of the articles said we will get an announcement as early as next week. But there are also a few things that you should take into account. Like I said earlier on, this is not the first time that this topic has been raised. Um, but this time it has reached a level of seriousness which I don't think it has reached in the past. Um, so, if I were working for a Chinese company, would I be concerned? Yes. Uh, but it is impossible for me or even any sort of legal specialist to sit down and to predict what the Chinese government is going to decide to do ultimately. Because by their own admission, this is a test run and they have not conclusively decided how to proceed in the long term. All right. So this much we do know. Now you probably want to know what is the likelihood of this happening very soon. Well, this is it's a little bit, it's an educated guess, but it seems very likely. All right. But then in the past, they've also said that they would do certain things and they haven't done it, like most other governments. Uh, but the fact that this was published by Reuters, it has drawn a lot of media attention, and the fact that some of these companies were laying off employees, these are all warning signs to me. And so I don't want somebody to come back to me 2 months from now and tell me, okay, but you said this and that happened. This is not what I intended to do with this video. I did not intend to make any sort of prophetic predictions. Okay, I made this video to help you to rationalize the information that is being published regarding online teaching and Chinese legislation. And if you want to rationalize it, then I would say the responsible thing would be to take this very seriously, um, and also take into account that this does not affect every well-known online teaching company, because there are lists and lists of these companies who are not based in China. So they will not be affected by this legislation. So it is not quite the end of the world yet. It's not online teaching apocalypse. Um, and there are so many companies appointing online teachers out there. I have been begging, in my defense, I have been begging all my teachers on this page for how long? I mean, my videos on my page, on my blog, they are there. You can see whether I'm lying or not. I've been begging you for such a long time. Let us not focus only on Chinese companies, okay, or affiliates. I've been saying this for a long time uh, because they're unpredictable. Um, take it Vietnam, for example. I've been in the TFL industry probably way too long. Certainly, as long as I was in the legal industry. I remember in the early days, you could go to China, I think before the Z visa came out, and you could teach with a TFL and a college diploma. Uh, you could teach English in Thailand and Vietnam without a degree and just a TFL and work on a business visa. All of that has changed. And when they decide to make the change, it really, your well being isn't that important to them. Their priority is the students that are involved with the teaching process and the quality of the teaching that the students are getting. And by applying your own logic, you can realize, especially those of you who are watching this and have worked on several different platforms. I mean, I've worked on some platforms where there were so many grammatical errors in the material that I was supposed to teach that I thought to myself, my goodness, I mean, they should pay me extra for pointing out the grammatical errors and the spelling mistakes. And by my own admission, I am not the best speller in the world. I will never win a spelling bee contest. But, okay, neither were any of the great authors. Um, Hemingway, most especially, apparently, was really appalling at spelling. I don't want to go off topic. So, should you continue applying to Chinese companies? Yes. I don't have enough information to tell you to do anything else. Uh, but if you're going to be responsible, then you should really start thinking about applying to Russian schools, Skyeng, European schools, and I have been begging you for the longest time. Um, Go on to the internet. I am sending you links every week. I try my best, but at the moment, I'm under an incredible amount of pressure with my work. I mean, it's now 8 o'clock at night. I've started teaching since 8 a.m. this morning. I had a couple of breaks in between, to be fair. Uh, I, I could barely have a workout. I didn't have lunch today. So, you know, I can't put in as much effort as I try my best to get to you guys. But on the weekend, I will try to compile another list for you. Uh, but if I were working for a Chinese company, then I would seriously consider uh, be safe. I mean, like the articles from Reuters said, is expect the worst. Now, who am I, Alvin Knudsen, to try and contradict an esteemed institution like Reuters? Uh, what I can say is that Reuters is a very reliable source. Having taken that into account, I I read through 8 other sources to see if any of them contradict each other, and they haven't really. They've actually been very consistent in saying the same thing. Uh, so it looks like there is some changes coming, and that it might come quickly. Uh, but because of the unpredictable nature of the Chinese government, I would be a fool to make some sort of a prediction right now. But I would also be uh, I would not serve the underlining purpose of which I started this blog if I don't warn you and tell you that I think you should at least try to explore other venues as well. I remember one of my first videos I ever made. I said, guys, if you do online teaching, you can never only work for one company. If you get your first job, congratulations, and I'm really happy for you. And on that day, enjoy the victory. But the next day, you start applying for other companies again immediately. Okay, because I mean, I'm getting inboxes, and I will never use names. I mean, I appreciate the fact that the teachers on our page trust me, and I will never betray that trust. But the amount of inboxes that I am getting at the moment, I can't even attend to them. So there are many more that I just haven't been to yet, who have complained to me about not getting enough bookings. And they are not working for small unknown companies. Some of them are working for Magic Ears and what was it, Talk 51, big companies. Um, that is also an indication. So you really can't rely on one company, because something like this might happen. And I've seen in the past how huge um, massive online teaching companies just close overnight, or just went bankrupt due to bad administration or corruption. So, for all of you who are currently employed, uh, you could apply to other Chinese companies. Who knows? Maybe this blows over. Uh, like I said, this video is not a prediction. It is just my assessment of what I think, whether this is serious or whether this is exaggerated. Okay. And in closing, I will say this is serious. I don't think it is exaggerated. In any event, Reuters is not in the habit of exaggerating things. Okay, well, the media has a innate tendency to exaggerate things. But if the premier of probably the second most powerful country in the world considers this topic to be important enough for him to be quoted on making comments regarding this topic, then certainly uh, something is surely about to happen. If not in the immediate future, then quite likely in a couple of months, or it might be implemented before the spring holiday. So that's what most of these articles say. Most of them are saying that, from what they can gather, these changes will be implemented before the next spring holiday. Whether that is practically possible, that's really difficult. I am no expert on Chinese geographics and how quickly they can implement legislation like that. For example, if you make a law that says that it is a criminal offense to go into a public place without a mask, but you don't have any police officers to implement it, then, well, it's the same with any type of legislation. You could very well pass it. How long it will start to take effect or have an effect on you is very difficult to say. And then you must also take into account, sorry, I'm on 22 minutes already, but I'm trying to cover this um, as effectively as I can. These companies might not all of them close down, they might just move. Okay. These companies are regulated by Chinese legislation because they are subject to Chinese law, because they're based in China. However, I'm not quite sure what the situation will be with regards to companies who are not situated in China but provide online teaching classes to Chinese students. I can tell you, in terms of international law, there's no way of the Chinese government imposing their legislation on online teaching schools in Russia. And I know there are Russian schools who are providing online teaching to Chinese schools, Taiwan, Hong Kong, all of that. So it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. But it is a reason for some concern. Right. Guys, if you have any more questions, I will continue reading up on this. And if I am going to send messages to some of my Chinese recruiter friends that have been recruiters in China for a very long time. I've not had a response from any of them yet, but if I do, I will update you either via a message, a post on Facebook, or if it is a long story or a complicated issue, then I will post a video about it. What should you do now after watching this video, or after reading these articles? What is your next step? Your next step is to do what I suggest. I suggest. I was subtle about it, but now I'm less subtle about it. Go onto the web, go look at those links. You know, I said in another video, I've read so many comments of people who don't have degrees, but they're registered students or they have 10 years teaching experience. They have an awesome introduction video and a profile pic. And some of these companies require bachelor's degrees. They apply to them and they don't have degrees, but they're transparent and honest about it. And many of them get employed anyway. Okay, so yeah. Uh, that might be one option. And I don't want to send you down the wrong road, but I know of several cases like that. Um, these companies still have a discretion. Some of them are rigid and strict about the bachelor requirement, and some are less so. I mean, for example, Magic Ears at one stage was a bachelor's degree, and now it is a registered student. So they've also started applying some discretion. All right, guys, if there's anything I can help with, just drop a comment in the comments section. Like I said, I should get more feedback uh, sometime this week from my Chinese recruiters. And if I have anything of any real importance regarding that issue, then I will update you as always. I think we should have a Zoom meeting soon where I'll put up a Zoom room number and a password. Just in the comments section, just let me know if you would be interested in that. And then, because this is a one-way conversation, and I don't get enough feedback always from the teachers, but in a Zoom conference, we can actually discuss some issues and or address certain issues, and then I might be able to give you some advice or get hold of somebody that can help you, because I don't presume to have all the answers, but I know a lot of people who have been in this industry significantly longer than I have, and I can get hold of them and they might be able to help you. Alright, guys, so don't stress too much. This is not the end of the world, and there will always be a plan. Okay, alright. And I have not stopped hunting for you guys.